So thanks everyone for joining us. My name is John Wettenkamp. I'm the Director of Operations at the LoDo District, Inc. And I'm here with the Coohills leadership here. And we are going to be doing a little bit of a cooking demo for you tonight. And this is the first in a series of events for LoDo Bites, which is our revamped event series. We want to shout out Xcel Energy for your sponsorship of this event. Thank you so much. And throughout this event, we'll just be giving you several tips and tricks of things you can do throughout the holiday season. Hopefully you have your recipe cards that were mailed out to you so you can follow along tonight. And so these events are designed to really highlight the amazing restaurant community that we have in LoDo, as well as show what they're doing, what our restaurants are doing to be creative to get through the pandemic and this winter. And so, for example, Coohills is doing these kinds of Zoom cooking demos, and they're also doing all kinds of packages that you can do throughout the holiday season. And so I'm going to pass it over to Diane and let her explain a little bit about that.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to do this. This is something that we've gotten creative with, and again, like as you mentioned, trying to see how we can still engage with our community, and we love the opportunity, especially with the LoDo District. You guys have been amazing and great partners for us. So we're thrilled to be able to do this. And this is my husband, Tom Coohill, the chef, and this is Skylar Dorman. He's our manager / mixologist extraordinaire. Skylar is going to be making the mulled wine recipe, and Tom's going to be doing a root vegetable tarte tatin. Right? I would pronounce it close enough. But yes, we are doing this, and we're just letting everyone get everything together. So we're just doing these introductions for a couple minutes, and then we're going to get started. But we're doing the Zooms if anyone's interested. We are also doing holiday boxes for people to pick up with our hot smoked salmon and caviar and champagne and homemade bread pudding. And we're just delivering dinners to people's homes at this point. So please reach out if we can assist with anything at all during the time that we're closed for indoor dining. We will reopen again once the indoor dining ban is lifted, and we hope to see everyone soon. Happy holidays. I'm going to let you guys take it from here. Have a great Zoom demo.
All right.
Thank
you.
Well,
welcome everybody again. Happy holidays. We're going to do a couple things today. One of this mulled wine, and we're also do the root vegetable tartine. So this idea came from tarte tatin, which is usually apples, caramelized apples with puff pastry. You've probably seen it at restaurants, or maybe you've made it before. When you turn it out, you've got this beautiful caramelized apple dessert. Well, I kind of have an idea for root vegetables because, in the winter, you're not getting all the beautiful green summer vegetables and spring vegetables. So what can we do with root vegetables? It's a little different other than roasting, grilling, pureeing, and sauteing. So this is a different type of dish that you can do at home. We have puff pastry in this recipe. Puff pastry is a 2 or 3 day process to make it from scratch. So you can buy it at the local grocery store. It's called puff dough, puff pastry, sometimes flaky pastry. It really doesn't matter that much if you just get some type of pastry that is not sweet or savory. You don't want it sugar because you're already going to have a little bit of sugar in the caramelization of the vegetables when we roast them. So I'm going to have John help me out here a little bit to get started to show you the first part of it. Then we're going to jump over to the mulled wine with Skylar. So we're going to kind of go a little bit back and forth. And you can record this if you right click on it or something.
Just the red button at the bottom.
Check the red button at the bottom. It should say record. If you want to record it, you can go along with me as we go along, or you can record it and then do it later, pause and play as you go along with the recipe. So there's 2 ways to do that. So we're first going to peel our vegetables. I added carrots to this recipe. You don't have to, just a little more color. So we have carrots, we have parsnips, sweet potatoes, and some Yukon Gold yellow potatoes. So we're going to peel all these. John, if you want to go ahead and start that process. Sure. So we're going to peel all these vegetables. And then I have everything weighed out. So when I work on a recipe like this, before you start cooking everything, just weigh everything out, separate it all out, Have it all ready to go, so you're not fumbling around for things as things are burning on the stove. You don't want that to happen. So I'm going to take this onion. You know, this recipe is kind of, you could use other root vegetables. You could use celery root. You could use beets if you want. Somebody asked me if we could use rutabagas or turnips. Yes, but they're very specific. You know, I love rutabagas and turnips, but 50% of the people at least don't like them. So if you're doing it for a dinner party, I wouldn't use rutabagas and turnips. But all root vegetables will work really, really well. So we're going to take these onions. Of course, these are all things you can get at your local grocery store, so it's easy to procure the ingredients. And I'll put these on a sheet pan. So what I'm doing basically is I'm going to roast these with some garlic. I'll put a little bit of that olive oil in your recipe, just a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt and pepper. We grind this every day because we go through, you know, bulk up. You can use a pepper mill, works great, just as good or even better. But if you're going through a lot of it, you can grind it in a pepper grinder, like I did. So I'm just putting a little salt and pepper on these guys. Then I'm just going to kind of rub them around a little bit in the oil, because the onions and the garlic will cook much faster than the potatoes and the carrots. So you want to kind of separate them. If you only have one pan, put your vegetables on one side and your faster cooking items, the onion and the garlic on the other side. You can do it that way. So that's going to go in the oven in a minute. But first, we're going to take these carrots. What I'm trying to do is I'm using this pan. You can use a. We're going to bake this. This is the finished product. We'll be able to show you that when it's done. But you can use a cake pan, but you probably want a 10-inch, 8-inch-ish pan like that. It could be a saute pan with tall sides, or it can be a cake pan if you want. And then I'm going to cut my vegetables probably about a little less than an inch tall, because I'm going to stand them up in there. You want them to be, you know, relatively close to the same size, because you're going to make kind of this mosaic type thing. When you turn it out, you'll see what it looks like. So these, I'm just cutting these carrots, putting them in a little bowl here. We're going to toss this in the, John's going pretty fast with this stuff. I better get going here. It's going pretty quick. So we're going to cut these about an inch or so, putting them in the pan. Now this parsnip is pretty wide. I don't want them much bigger than this. So what I'll do is I'll cut the parsnip in half. So I got a half moon, because if it's too big, it'll take up too much of the pan. You really want to see all the different colors and different textures of these root vegetables. So there we go, vegetables. Good. Sweet potatoes, same thing. This sweet potato is on the borderline of being too big in circumference, but we're going to go with it. I think it'll be good. So, you know, you want probably no bigger than that, so that's good. Okay. Potato. I cut the ends off just a little bit because I want it to stand up in the bottom of the pan. Get a little bit more. Save your scraps for mashed potatoes. This might be a little large, so I'm going to do a half moon on these. Okay. So save your scraps again. You can make a nice little vegetable saute if you want. That's pretty good. Cut the ends of it off. Cut that one in half. Okay. It's kind of an average recipe, so if you find that these vegetables are more than that little 8-inch or 10-inch pan, you can make 2 of them or 1.5. A little salt and pepper to your taste. Okay. With the remainder of the olive oil, you don't want a lot of oil, you just want a little bit, because really it's going to be held together by the sugar. Awesome. So there we go. So we got this done. And these are going to go on a sheet pan, cookie sheet. You know, you can use a saute pan if you had to. Separate them out. Don't leave them in a pile because you want to get a little bit of caramelization on the bottom. All right, Eric, go throw those in the oven for me. And Skylar, you can go with your LoDo wine.
All right. Well, welcome everybody again. As Chef was saying about kind of pre-weighing everything, I always like to do that with recipes as well. Just kind of getting everything measured out really helps when you're ready for that process to finally go. Now I went ahead and created a batch as well to get going. So we're going to pour a little bit of that up so you can see the final product here before we start going. And there's really two different ways when you're doing mulled wine. You can do it in a pot, which is perfect. Sir. That way we can cheers you, and it's always better to drink while you're working anyway. Makes cooking and time in the kitchen go by a little bit quicker. So yeah, you can do one in your pot. Another way you can do that is in the crock pot. So we're going to be showing you the crock pot today. Most everybody has a crock pot. I believe highly underutilized in the beverage world as well. You do mulled wine. You do batch toddies. They're great for parties. I'll cheers everybody. You get some flavor profiles working while we start going here. Perfect.
Oh, that's good.
So,
I like that.
Start with our average crock pot. I'm just going to this to the side here. So yeah, your average crock pot size. The great thing with mulled wine is you can adjust these recipes based on how big your party's going to be. With this recipe, this is a little bit smaller. Let's say we have Chef and Miss Diane over for dinner. We're going to do a little bit nicer mulled wine. I've definitely had some football days. We do bigger batches. With mulled wine, it's really nice. You don't have to, you know, blow your bank account up with the wine here. I've definitely used some box wine to do some. It turns out really well. You're adding so many different flavors to it that, like I said, you really don't need to go out and buy a nice Bordeaux or anything like that. But definitely a great, great for get-togethers. It's definitely one that not a lot of people do utilize, so it's just a lot of fun. Well, I'll grab you. We'll start going. So, Chef, you want to hit that burner? We're going to start by toasting some of our spices here.
We'll go right here. We're using a little click burner, so easier to see.
So the two we're going to toast is our little star anise.
Okay.
A lot of Asian cooking will use your star anise. So that's just going to be your little star right there. And then depending on the size of the cinnamon stick, we're going to do about 3 to 5 cinnamon sticks in there. If they are smaller, you know, go with the 5. If they're a little bit bigger, you can go with a little bit less. And we'll save a little bit of them for garnishes. We have orange sauce for garnish as well, but it's always a really nice touch. So we want to, we're just going to kind of spice those up for a little bit. We want to roast them up. What that's going to do is that's really going to bring out the flavor. It's going to help enhance those. So nice thing, if you're not using a crock pot, definitely use a little pan. If you are using a pot on your stove, which is a lot of fun too, it looks really, really nice, gets that smell throughout your house. You can go ahead and toast your spices in the bottom of that pot and then add your ingredients into there. And you'll know when those are ready to be toasting. You will be able to smell those aromatics coming out of there. But really just adds a beautiful taste. So while those are going right now, to go ahead and start with that process, we have our organic apple cider. This is Big B's. And we're going to add that into here. That's going to be out of northern Colorado. Really awesome product. You can use an apple juice as well. I highly recommend not doing your from concentrate or previously frozen. We really like with everything we do here at Coohills, the freshest and highest quality of products. So we definitely love everything that they do there. That being said, going along with our maple syrup, we're actually using an awesome company out of Vermont. Everything they're doing is awesome, biosustainably, eco-dynamic. We do try and use local as possible, but obviously the best is coming out of Vermont. So we'll add that at this part as well. And then I'll get you here if you want to take some zest off of that. And those really awesome. So we're going to leave the zest out of there. We're going to save those for garnish. So yeah, zest or I think you're good on this. Huh? Okay. Yeah, throw those on in there. So you just take little swaths out, just like that. Throw those in a glass of water. We use those for garnishing for later. You want to do the rest of that. So yeah, this first part, what we're really wanting to do is take out a lot of the flavors. We're going to round it out, let some of these sugars come up before you add in the actual wine. As you can see, we will be using the juice from this orange. We'll also be taking another orange while working on that with your cloves. Now this is probably the funnest part for me in the whole part, and I just think it looks so great. You take your little cloves here, and this you'll need about 10 to 15, really based on your flavor. We've definitely done some clove-heavy mulled wines that I've done a good 30 in an orange. So don't be afraid, everything is to taste. Another great thing about the mulled wine is, we'll go over in a little bit as well, make it your own. You know, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You know, my flavor is different than yours, but you know, you can really make it your own, and that's definitely a lot of fun. So then we're actually gonna, if you wanna cut that in half, and we can add those spices that we toasted up. We'll just toss those right in, and that's really gonna start spicing up in those sugars, really letting those flavors. And then we have a little juicer. This is just a little hand pressed juicer. This is really nice to use if you don't have a main juicer at home. And I like these too. We'll use these a lot behind the bar. As a basic, it's really good at keeping the pulp out, so you don't really have to worry about a lot of pulp. They do have bigger sizes. We have the lemon lime here at work, so the oranges are a little bit funny. But you'll put it face down, and that's just going to push all that into there. And as you can see, the orange is a little bit big. That's all right. You get that first part, and then you just slide it over and hit that second part. You get all those juices in there. And actually, if you want to keep clothing into that orange, like I said, it's my favorite part. Something therapeutic about it. Now with this orange juice, really, it's about one orange. You're really just trying to get that citrus, that acid in there to round it out. The fun thing about this, you can use lemons, you can use limes. We've done clementine, we've done blood oranges. Once again, this is just a really awesome recipe. I use it at the house a lot. But here at Coohills, we do all sorts of different kinds. Depending on the time of the year. Doesn't necessarily have to be winter time to do a mulled wine. We've done them in the summer. Most of the time you'll do sangria in the summer. But this is definitely a fun holiday wine that's super easy, but it'll make you look really, really good. So once we get all the cloves in that, we're actually going to cut that in half as well and add the orange in the cloves in it this time. And then we're going to let that sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, letting those really round out, letting those flavors really melt together before we add in the wine. And then as you'll see on your card, you add in that brandy at the last. And a few different reasons for that. You really don't want to cook that wine down too much. It'll really bring out a little bit more of that tannicky, a little bit more of that bitteriness the longer that you'll cook it. So you do want to have it warmed up, but you don't want to overcook it and reduce it down too much. And then with the brandy that we'll be using today, always with your brandy or whatever spirit we do end up choosing or you end up choosing, you'll want to do that right before serving. Same with the final sweetening. because as you're cooking that, it is bringing out the sugars. If you add in your brown sugar, an example with this recipe at the beginning, it might be way too sweet at the end. So you'll definitely want to add those in with the brandy. You don't want to necessarily cook out that flavor, and you also don't want to cook out that alcohol because that's what you're drinking it for anyway, to stay warm. It looks like he's almost got the cloves all in there. So I said we'll kind of just cut that in half, and it kind of looks like a little Frankenstein experiment in there.
Could you use a bottle of wine, red wine, that's been open for a few days and it's a little beyond its drink date, 3 or 4 or 5 days?
So I would recommend not to. I would recommend obviously use that for cooking in certain recipes. With something like this, that almost goes with a corked wine. So that flavor is going to be off. You are going to bring up that temperature, but it is still going to have that. I always like to say when I think of a corked wine, wet newspaper or wet cardboard boxes, and that flavor will stay with the mulled wine. So as you can see, we have those out. Now with this too, this cooking process, why we're adding these in right away, and I always put one face down and then one with the cloves down. You're really taking a lot of that oils from the orange zest, adding those into it, letting those break down. Because you are putting that in whole, it has a little bit of that pith, which a lot of people consider bitter. That's going to help break that down as well. So yeah, we're going to let that kind of cook for about 15, 20 minutes and let those round out. And then we can come back to that to add the wine. So as we put these, as we peel these, we're just going to put these in water. Really nice way to keep those nice and moist for garnish for later. Really beautiful presentation. And you'll want to put this in the fridge too. So kind of chilled water out of the sink. Go ahead, put those in the fridge for later.
I think you forgot something.
Oh,
Right?
Miss Diane? Yes.
I
Yes.
think they forgot to put one for me. So I did it for us. Yes, oh, that's good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Great job, everyone. Good job.
So in this recipe, we're using brandy. We're going to get into that a little bit because we do have a little bit of time with everything roasting in the oven and this kind of curing. I really, really love this peach brandy. Colorado does a lot of great peach brandies. Obviously, everybody knows Palisade peaches, Colorado. It's our thing. This is Rising Sun. This is going to be actually right by Mile High Stadium. They do so many cool products. They actually do a Hatch chili liqueur. It's a Colorado chili, so it's a mix of Hatch and Anaheim's. Nice thing about it, it's not overly spicy. You just get that really good flavor, so really good in margaritas if you don't want it overly spicy, but you really like that flavor. They do this one couple batches once a year, so if you can get your hands on it, do it. There is usually a waiting list for it, so kind of, if you don't have it right away, get it from the distillery. You got to kind of know somebody, but it's amazing. As I was saying, you have a big party over. You're watching the Broncos on Sunday. You know, you might not necessarily want to do the nicest wine because it's you and your buddies drinking, right? You don't necessarily have to have the nicest brandy. This is Christian Brothers. Definitely still a quality product. Going to be a little bit more available to find and a little bit easier on your wallet there. And you're not using a huge amount, so you're going to be, you're going to be good with it. A lot of good fun things to do, though. I mean, as I was saying, we do a lot of different ones around here. We have the master blender of Glenmorangie and Ardbeg come and do a class for the staff here. Really, really awesome. We stayed for dinner. We ended up doing a Scotch mulled wine with him. We used the Ardbeg Anoa Noa, and it added a really awesome smokiness to it. A lot of people are like scared of Scotch and other things. Really, really awesome. We used a lot more cardamom in that one. So your spices can change too based on what you're really trying to do. But we've done them with Applejack. We really like Applejack Golden Moon out of Golden, Colorado. We've done it with Calvados. The Deck, which is a really awesome citrus and clove liqueur. That's from 291 down in Colorado Springs. Really, really awesome. If you're in a time crunch, you don't necessarily have time to run to the store, you don't have clothes in your house or you're out of some star anise, you can definitely use some of that. Another kind of cheat we use to save time on some of the spices is chai tea. So if you're, don't want to run to the store, chai tea, I really like the Tazo. They do a chocolate chai tea. So you would put that in at this point and let that simmer. Once you put the wine in, you would take those out at that point. With the tannins, you just don't want those to the tea has its same kind of grip as you do with the wine. So you wouldn't want to keep them in there the whole time. That's the same with Breckenridge does a spiced whiskey. That's really great. We did a really fun one that was a rosemary and cranberry sangria. We used a rye whiskey for that. So the options are endless. Like I said, tweak it, make it your own, make it fun. This is just a classic stand-true recipe that I use all the time. I know you like the mulled wine. What do you have?
Oh, yeah. I think it's great. It's good because it's warm. It's really cold out right now, so yeah. It's really good. I can make that sauce now for the tartine.
I'm going to get this, sit this off to the side for a minute.
Okay, we're going to, while the vegetables are roasting, we're going to make the caramel sauce. So I take sugar. And if you could get me a little bit of water. That much of water. So I make the sugar the consistency of wet sand. So, and then I'll caramelize it. And then I'll add my vinegar to it, which will give it a little savory component. So it won't be quite so sweet. Also, we're going to take our little, you can pick the stems off these guys. These are okay. This is our fresh oregano and fresh sorrel. These are the type of herbs that you use in the winter that are pretty good, they're pretty hardy. So I wouldn't use like basil because it's not really in season unless you're in a very warm climate. So here I'm going to add the sugar to make add the water to the sugar to make it look like wet sand. One thing about when you're cooking sugar, when you're caramelizing sugar, everything has to be very clean. The sugar has to be clean. It can't be next to your flour bin where you may get flour. Anything that's in the sugar that makes it dirty, technically dirty because it's not pure sugar, it won't caramelize right. So make sure that your sugar is really clean, and then make sure your pot that you're cooking your sugar in is really, really clean. If the pot has oil in it, any type of soap in it or anything, it won't caramelize. So everything's got to be really clean. In this particular instance, I'm going to make the tartine in the same pot that I'm making caramelized sugar in. You don't have to do it that way. You caramelize your sugar and then pour it into your baking pan, your cake pan, whatever you're going to make your tartine in. Okay, so we have the, you chop that up a little bit, just a rough chop. So we have our herbs chopping, we have our grated mozzarella cheese, and we're going to caramelize our sugar. This takes about, I would say this amount of sugar will take about 3 or 4 minutes. You make sure you get it dark enough. Don't pull it off before it's really caramelized, and you'll see that as I cook the sugar. And then the vegetables are almost done. I just checked them back there. That's pretty good. I've done this before. Twice. Yeah, that's good. So here we go. So I got my vinegar ready to go. Don't be running around looking for the vinegar while your sugars come. Have it all measured out, laid out. So when the sugar is caramelized, you put the vinegar right in and it's ready to go. So what will happen is it'll caramelize. I'll put the vinegar in and I'll set it to the side. By the time your vegetables are cooked, the sugar might become hard. You'll be able to turn the pan upside down. You'll think you've screwed up. You haven't. Don't worry. You'll see when we build the vegetables into the pan, and then you throw it back in the oven, the sugar softens up again, or the caramel softens up again, and kind of goes in with the vegetables. So that's kind of the idea of tartine. We're doing it with root vegetables again, so it's just something a little different. Do this with apples too. I would eliminate the vinegar, eliminate the cheese and the herbs, and you can do it with apples. It's same recipe, similar recipe. So we're gonna let this caramelize a little bit. So it's bubbling, so it takes, when you start to make caramel, if you're ever do any type of caramel, don't put it on the stove and go watch a TV show or go do something else, because I guarantee you it'll burn. Stand there, literally like watching water boil, but it does it a lot faster, and it will caramelize a lot faster than you think. So don't walk away from it. Just, you know, bring an iPad or something if you have to watch TV. It'll be right next to the caramel. So we're letting it cook a little bit. Should be done. You can go back and here. You can go back and grab the root vegetables, and if the onions are caramelized or brown, just bring those too. Put them back here. So the vegetables should be, you'll see when they come out of the oven, nicely brown on the outside, a little soft, you know, because they're root vegetables. And then they're going to cook a little bit more when we put them in the oven, but they kind of, the starch in the potatoes kind of pulls everything together with the caramel. So we're just letting this caramelize a little bit here. And there's different levels of caramel. I like to caramelize it pretty dark, because it's still going to cook a little bit in the oven. So you want this to be golden brown on the outside, or dark, a little bit darker. But the flavor is what you're really looking for in caramel. So, you know, don't be afraid to let it get a little dark, because it'll don't undercook it. Don't undercook the caramel. We're letting this boil. Anybody have any questions? I think you type some questions in too.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Chef Tom or anyone over here, feel free to enter those into the chat box.
Yeah, we'll answer the questions on the fly. This is like the 5th or 6th one of these we've done recently, and we're getting better at it. So you can ask any questions you want. We have people on here from all over the country, even outside of LoDo. So you have people from Texas, New York, everywhere. So
for anyone wondering, it just looks like water boiling in the pot right now. It just looks like a rapid boil happening.
Right. Can you see the pot, Eric? Not really. So as it starts to get closer to caramel, you'll see it starts to get a light amber color, very light yellowish amber color. Then you know you're getting close, because once it gets to this point, it starts to get the vegetables out. Yeah. Right. Oh, good. The onions weren't ready. Need a little longer. So the here's what the vegetables look like when they're done. They're kind of you don't want them. Just use the recipe for the amount of oil, because you don't want a lot of oil on them. You want them to be roasted, but almost a little dry. You know? Almost there. You must be doing a good job, because I don't have any questions yet. Let's see. We're almost there, and I've got this puff pastry over here that I'll show you what to do with at the end, once we get take this pot. I like to cut the puff pastry about the size of the pot. So what I should have done, I did this with this one, is measure the size of the top of your puff pastry by the so you can use the pan before you start cooking in it, and cut around it. But I'm going to use a plate, because it's going to be the same size. So it's starting to caramelize around the edges. I'll just, don't put a spoon in there and stir it or anything. Just kind of move it a little bit like that. So it'll start caramelizing. Kind of move the pan. If your stove is hotter, your burner's hotter on one side, you're going to move the pan a little bit so it'll caramelize the other side. You see it's starting to smoke. You're starting to get that smell. You smell that?
That burnt marshmallow smell.
Yeah, like burnt. But it's not ready yet, so it's got to be. See how it's kind of lightly golden. Mm-hmm. It's got to be pretty dark before it's done. Now, if you have a marble counter, don't take this pan and put it directly on the counter, because you might crack the marble, because it's super hot right now. Good. Very good. Okay, so see, it's still, see that? You almost think it's burning. It's not really.
It's getting a dark golden hue to it.
Yeah, so now, just when the bubbles start to get smaller, then the caramel's done. You think it's already done, but I like to get it a little darker. Okay, so it's pretty done. So I'm going to add the vinegar to it. It'll bubble up a little bit, and all you're doing is mixing the two together. And then you're going to turn your burner off. And now you got your caramel and your vinegar. See that? Make sure you turn your hood stove fan on high, because it'll definitely. So before we add our vegetables, I'm gonna do the puff pastry. So I'll take my puff dough. Okay. Turn it out. And I'm gonna cut around it. You can use the scraps of the puff dough for strudel to make an apple pie or something. Okay. I've done that. Now I've done like this. If you get a little crack in it like this, it's okay. Just put it, fold it over, and take a fork. You're going to want to poke some holes all around it because you want the steam to evaporate. It doesn't get really, really soft. Okay, so we've got those done. The puff pastry's ready. That'll be the last thing you put on is the puff pastry. I'm going to take our pot. So we're basically going to make a little mosaic. So I try to take like a potato, then a sweet potato on the other side, then a parsnip next to the sweet potato. Don't like put all the potatoes on one, because it's going to be like a pie, so everybody wants to get a little bit of everything. Potato over here, potato maybe over here. I'm standing them up. And then some carrots. You don't have to do this when the caramel is hot. You can do this when it's ice cold. You'll get the same result. Parsnip, potato in the middle. I like to, at the end, the carrots are always a lot thinner, so I'll like fill in the blanks with the carrots. Parsnip. See how I'm kind of, can you see this at all? Not really. I'll lift it up and show you when you get them all in there. So I'm just putting these carrots in here. Then I'll take the onions, the garlic. So I've got some garlic cloves. I'll throw some of those in there. A little bit of garlic. Okay. Then the onions I'll take out. Cut that in half, and I'll try to kind of wrap these around a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is all like everything's flavoring each other, you know. It's all these different textures and flavors of vegetables. I'll put onions all around it, as I can. Shove them down in there. It'll look perfect on the top when you turn it out. Put some onions in there. Okay, then I'll take, I always like to use the carrots because they can fill in all the little holes there. You want it to be really packed in there tight. And if one vegetable is a little shorter than the rest, I'll throw another vegetable on top of it. Try to make things about the same size. Okay. Sure.
It's nice though, you've already done all the hard stuff, you're just kind of filling it all in.
See that? Okay. All right, so now I take the herbs, sprinkle those around on top, and I take the cheese. It can be done without the cheese too. You don't have to do it with the cheese if you don't want to. I know that because I did it without the cheese. I forgot the cheese once and it came out fine. And this on top of pastry. Now you're ready for the oven. Okay, so we've got that in the oven, but I've already got one cooked. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn it out so we can try it while we're drinking the mulled wine. We have Skylar Dorman. So we've got, this has been out of the oven for about, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes. It's still a little bit warm on the bottom, so it should turn out really well. If it's, I always go around it a little bit with a knife, so it won't stick on the sides. And then I'll put it on the stove for just 1 second, because if the sugar gets really, really cold, of course the sugar won't come out. I think it's probably not cold enough even as it is, but I always, as a little security blanket, I put it on the stove for a second just to warm everything up. And I take it on my plate, I turn it out. A little bit sticky, but not too much. So you got this, if it sticks a little bit, just pull the vegetables out. You got this beautiful little tart with some vegetables. And see that? So what we'll do is, so you can make this earlier in the day, set it aside, warm it up, just warm it up a little bit so the caramel gets soft again, and then we can just cut it and serve it as a vegetable. Really, really good if this was vegetable.
The dough did rise a little bit. It's got a little bit of a pedestal for it. It's really nice.
So we'll taste this while Skylar finishes up. Skylar can talk some more about the mulled wine. Looks like a little vegetable pie, if you will. Oh, man. Skylar, let me get a fork for it. You can try while we're talking. All right. So you're gonna get this savory kind of vegetable. It's just a good way of doing root vegetables, something different, you know? Something a little different.
It's really nice. It's rich, but not too rich. And there's definitely a sweetness that comes through that I wasn't expecting. That's really nice.
Yes, it's you know, it gets kind of boring, but in the winter sometimes, you know, you know, in the summer and the spring there's so many fresh, beautiful vegetables, and in winter it gets down to root vegetables. So anything different or unique we can do with root vegetables is a good thing. It's actually kind of vegan too. There's no, take the cheese out, it's vegan. So Diane's a vegan, so you know.
Now with the puff pastry,
Well, you can use a pastry that doesn't have butter in it. So, you know, the way we make puff pastry, it has a lot of butter, but you can get different doughs that don't have, you know, that have shortening and things like that. And if you're vegan, you can get a vegan puff pastry dough at Whole Foods, or dough. You can use biscuit dough or something if you wanted to. Want more wine cooking?
yeah. So, getting back in. So this normally, as I said, going about 15, 20 minutes. If you are on the crock pot, make sure we're on high on this part, because you do want those temperatures up there. Getting these sugars, as Chef was caramelizing his sugars, obviously not to that same extent, but you do want to bring those together and get them going. Now, as we were saying with the harder alcohols, the wine as well, completely preference. With a lot of and most of the mulled wine recipes that we use, I'm going to go ahead and usually do a cab sauv. This is Dreaming Tree. This is a Napa Valley, California. I really love this in this recipe. A little bit of that cherry. I would say darker raspberry, but this also has a little bit of that oat flavoring. And you also do get a little bit of chocolate too. So I just think it goes really well with the spices. So Dave Matthews Band did do a collab with the winemaker on the Dreaming Tree. Yeah, you can, you know, to your preference. For For example, when we did the Scotch mulled wine, we did a Malbec to hold up a little bit stronger to the Scotch. We've definitely done some with Chianti, Pinot Noir. We actually did one not too long ago at the house. We tried one with rosé, and it actually turned out really, really good. That one we did with pomegranates, which was a lot of fun. So like I said, it's endless. You can play around and have so much fun, and it really is, you know, the talk of the party. Same with Chef's Tartine. It's almost, you know, how do you do it? You don't want to tell them how easy it actually is.
So the alcohol is not burned off.
So once we start adding the wine, we're going to take this off a high. If you're doing it on here, we're going to throw that on the low, so we don't burn off the alcohol. If you're doing this on the stove, you'll want this to be about a medium high. Once you're adding in your alcohol, you want to put that to about a low. Really, you just want to bring it up to the temperature you want, almost a hot cocoa temperature. But yeah, you're not wanting to burn off the alcohol volume. So like I said, this recipe, we're using a Cab Sauv. I like to use a California Cab Sauv with this recipe. There's another one that we do here at Coohills that we do use a French Cab with. That's just going to have a little bit less fruit, a little bit more earthy tones to it. Goes great with a lot of chef's dishes. His escargot specifically was kind of where that was going. Mixing with his tomatoes in there, his garlic. So it had to be a little bit more boisterous to stand up to all those flavors. So we did use an old world a wine in that sense. Once again, this is the easy part. You throw the wine in. We're just going to let that simmer for a little bit longer. Now, there's the two different ways to do it based off the sugars as well. You could add the maple syrup now. We did it beforehand just to really get it going. With the crock pot, you're definitely going to want to do it at the beginning. If you're on the stove, now's when you want to add in that maple syrup. Just with the crock pot, slow cooker, it is going to take it a little bit longer. So like I said, we would give that about another half an hour. We don't have that time right now. So you got another 20, 30 minutes on low for that, really just to get that wine up to temp, letting all those flavors that you broke down at the beginning mixed in with that. So if we did fast forward, let's say we're about, 10, 15 minutes before guests starting arriving, and you want to put that last touch on there. That's where we add in the brandy. So once again, this is going to be our Colorado peach brandy. One of the misconceptions of brandy is you can flavor them. A lot of them, they're not actually going to taste like peach. What you're doing is you're actually using peach as the distilling agent, the sugars, if you will, from that peach. So it can be flavored in that. But it's not necessarily what it's going to taste like. Same with your cognacs, your calvados, things like that. Instead of using your grains, your corn, such like that you would with your vodkas, your bourbons, scotches, agave for your tequilas and mezcals. This you're using your grapes, peaches, apples, pear. There's an assortment of different vehicles to use that. So this one, obviously not necessarily going to taste like peach, just using the peaches as the agent. You will have it in the slight little back part just because that was in there, but it's really going to be very similar to a cognac, to a high-end bourbon, if you will, a high-end American whiskey, Canadian whiskey, probably a little bit closer to a Canadian whiskey with that little bit of sweetness to it. But once again, that's kind of why we love to have that in there. So then you kind of let that go. We add in our brandy. This is when we'll want to use our sugar, get it to that right level. Because like I said, everything is going to get sweeter as it goes along. You don't want to add your brown sugar until right when you add that brandy, right when you add that bourbon or scotch or calvados. really just because you don't want it to be too sweet. Honestly, with the batch we did earlier, this is a little bit of a darker brown sugar, so we really didn't need to use that much. And honestly, I used about half a spoonful in the last batch. So this is going to be a bigger spoon. So that's probably about 2 tablespoons total of brown sugar, but that's about what I used in the last one. So what you want to do is put it in there. I never like to use the same spoon, just in case I do need to add more. And depending on how much wine, how big your vessel is, we have these bar stir spoons that I really love to use. Give that a nice little twirl. And then you're at your house a little bit different. Obviously, for our tasting, you're not going to see us taste with the spoon, put it back in, taste with the spoon, put it back in. We use the straw trick. So if you do have little straws, I know we have a lot of metal straws at the house, but here we use disposable straws. You just stick them in there, use your finger at the end, it'll capture it. So that one I would put a little bit more sugar in there, but it's not quite up to heat with the wine that we just added. So that'll play as well. So then when we do go, put it in there, when you want to serve it, I'll grab the previous batch. So you'll have your ladle. The important thing with this is you don't necessarily have to strain it. When you do your ladle, you can kind of see if you have any of your star anise, your cloves come out, any citrus peels, anything like that. Just pour it on in. And then, as I said, you know, with the orange peels that we put off to the side, one of the fun things that I like to do is kind of get creative with the garnishes. Once again, you can do a cinnamon stick, put that in there. It's really nice. You won't necessarily see it at the beginning, but as you drink down, it'll go kind of show up a little bit more. So you had your previous swath is kind of the term we use for it. So you can have different sizes, you know, none of them are going to be the same. So you can always kind of roll one in there. You can always roll it around the cinnamon stick to put it in. It just adds a really nice colors to it. One of the fun ones I like to do, if you find a little bit of a fatter orange swath there, kind of cut to straight edges to add a really nice presentation. And now this one's called the bow tie, or the double snake tongue, if you will, depending on what part of the country and what kind of bar you're going into. New Orleans, you're definitely going to be the snake tongue. California, out in Hollywood, it was kind of known as the bow tie, a very classic garnish for martinis, old fashions. So you'll see, looks just like a bow tie or the snake's tongue. So that's going to be the double. And then just right down the middle, you'll do a nice little slice. And then you can kind of fold it. You just put it right on the edge of the glass there. And it just makes a really nice presentation, a little bit more festive. And makes you look like a really nice, you know, really nice host.
That's so nice.
Yeah, definitely a fun one. We do it for all of our holiday parties. People ask for it every year, so it's definitely one of those everyone's going to love coming over to your holiday party once we can have them again, and ask for it for years to come.
One other quick thing about the tartine, once it comes out of the oven, it needs to sit for at least 10 or 15 minutes before you turn it out. Don't turn it out right away. Give it about 15 minutes. And if you let it go longer, warm it up just a hair and then turn it out.
So you saw how easy it was for both of those items to be prepared, and I admittedly have never made either of those things, so I'm really excited. And I think this also proved that food in the winter can be just as beautiful as food any other time of year. It just requires a little bit of creativity and trying new things. So thank you, Skylar and Chef Tom. This was awesome.
Thanks for coming out. Happy
Thank you,
holidays,
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope all your recipes turned out wonderful. And we hope to see you when we reopen or in the future.
In the new year.
In the new year.
And so if you would like to do an event with Coohills, events@coohills.com. And then if you would like to be a part of the LoDo Bites program throughout 2021, you can email me at john@lodo.org. And we are good to go. Thank you so much.